Across the vastness of space, where stars burn like eternal candles, a war rages that will shape the destiny of all sentient life. Betrayal, sacrifice, and forbidden knowledge collide in a galaxy on the brink of collapse. From the ashes of destruction rises a new hope, but at what cost? Witness the rise of unlikely heroes as they face enemies both without and within. Will they prevail, or will their journey end in fire and ruin? Subscribe now to uncover the truth behind Eclipsing Eternity, a tale of courage, chaos, and cosmic warfare. The silence of the void was broken only by the faint hum of engines. Captain Kale Voss adjusted his visor, scanning the debris field before him. His ship, the Aegis Dawn Dash, drifted cautiously through the remnants of what had once been a thriving orbital station. Shattered hulls floated like ghostly monuments, their surfaces scarred by weapons far beyond human comprehension. Kale's gloved hand clenched around the control yoke as he replayed the transmission in his mind. The desperate plea for help from Commander Rhea Solon, leader of the Vanguard Initiative. She had vanished 3 weeks ago during a classified mission to investigate the mysterious Shard Nebula. Now, it seemed her warnings were more dire than anyone could have imagined. Kale wasn't alone on this mission. Beside him sat Yarrick Thane, a former mercenary turned reluctant ally. Jarek's sharp eyes flickered across the console, reading data streams faster than most humans could process them. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered, his voice low but cutting through the oppressive quiet. Whatever did this didn't leave much behind. Kale nodded grimly. The lack of survivors or even bodies was unnerving. It was as if the station had been consumed entirely, leaving only echoes of its existence. As they navigated deeper into the wreckage, something caught Kale's attention. A faint signal emanating from one of the larger fragments. He steered the Aegis Dawn closer, the ship's sensors struggling to penetrate the thick layers of radiation surrounding the object. When they finally breached the outer shell, they discovered a chamber unlike anything they'd ever seen. Walls lined with crystalline structures pulsed softly, casting eerie shadows across the room. At the center stood a pedestal, atop which rested an artifact glowing with an otherworldly light. Before either man could react, the artifact flared brightly, and a wave of energy surged outward, enveloping the ship. When Kale regained consciousness, the interior of the Aegis Dawn felt different. The air hummed with a strange resonance, and the lights flickered erratically. Yarrick groaned beside him, clutching his head. "What just happened?" he demanded, his voice tight with unease. Kale shook his head, still disoriented. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I think we're not alone anymore." As if on cue, the ship's systems began displaying readings of unknown entities moving outside. Shadows darted past the windows, too fast to identify clearly. They weren't natural. Nothing about this situation was natural. Kale activated the external cameras, hoping to get a better look at whatever was out there. What he saw chilled him to the bone. Creatures unlike any species catalogued in galactic records swarmed around the ship. Their elongated limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and their translucent bodies shimmered with iridescent hues. Most disturbing of all were their eyes, dozens of them, each glowing with malevolent intelligence. Yarrick cursed under his breath. "We need to get out of here, now." But escape wouldn't be easy. The artifact had somehow integrated itself into the ship's core systems, disabling critical functions. Every attempt to override it triggered alarms and caused further malfunctions. Frustration mounted as Kale realized they might be trapped. Then, a voice, soft yet commanding, spoke directly into their minds. "You have awakened the echoes. Prepare yourselves." Neither man dared to ask who or what had spoken. Instead, they braced for whatever came next. The creatures attacked without warning, latching onto the hull with terrifying precision. Their claws tore through the reinforced plating as though it were paper, sending sparks flying inside the cockpit. Alarms blared incessantly, drowning out Jarek's shouted orders. Kale fought to maintain control of the ship, his hands trembling on the controls. "If we don't do something soon, we're dead," Yarrick yelled over the chaos. But Kale already knew that. He scanned the readouts frantically, searching for any advantage they might exploit. An idea struck him, a risky maneuver, but their only chance. Yarrick, divert power to the thrusters. We're going to break free using brute force. Yarrick hesitated, then nodded. It's crazy enough to work, he muttered, punching commands into the auxiliary panel. The ship shuddered violently as the engines roared to life, pushing against the weight of the attackers. For a moment it seemed hopeless. Then, with a deafening screech, the creatures released their grip, retreating into the darkness of space. Breathing heavily, Kale guided the Aegis Dawn away from the debris field. Behind them, the crystalline structure housing the artifact imploded, releasing a shockwave that rippled through the nebula. Whatever had been awakened, it was no longer contained, and neither were its creators. Hours passed in tense silence as the ship limped toward the nearest safe zone, a remote outpost known as Haven 7. Kale and Yarrick worked tirelessly to repair the damage while keeping watch for signs of pursuit. Neither spoke of the events in the debris field, but the memory hung between them like a storm cloud. Finally, when the repairs were complete, Yarrick broke the silence. "Do you think those things are following us?" he asked, his tone uncharacteristically subdued. Kale glanced at him, his expression grim. "They'll follow wherever the artifact leads, which means we can't stop running until we figure out how to destroy it." Their arrival at Haven 7 brought little relief. The outpost was little more than a collection of prefabricated domes clinging to the edge of a barren asteroid. Still, it offered shelter and answers if they were lucky. Docking procedures were swift but cautious. Paranoia had become second nature after their encounter. As they disembarked, they noticed several figures watching from the shadows. One stepped forward, revealing herself to be none other than Commander Rhea Solon. Her appearance shocked them both. Gaunt, pale, and visibly haunted. "You shouldn't have come," she said simply, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're already here." Rhea led them to a makeshift command center buried deep within the outpost. Maps and schematics covered every available surface, illuminated by dim overhead lights. She explained everything she'd learned since disappearing weeks earlier. The Shard Nebula wasn't just a random phenomenon. It was a gateway, created by an ancient civilization long thought extinct. These beings, whom she referred to as the Architects, had designed the artifact as a fail-safe mechanism to seal away their greatest creation, the Echoes. However, tampering with the artifact had disrupted the seal, allowing the Echoes to breach reality. "They're not just monsters," Rhea continued, her voice strained. "They're fragments of the Architect's collective consciousness. Each one contains pieces of their knowledge and their rage. If they regain full form, nothing will stop them." Kale absorbed the information, his mind racing. "So what do we do?" he asked finally. Rhea hesitated, then pointed to a location marked on one of the maps. "There's another shard hidden in the drift expanse. If we can retrieve it, we might be able to stabilize the barrier or destroy the Echoes entirely." Yarrick frowned. "And if we fail? Then we die trying," Rhea replied flatly. There was no room for doubt in her words. Preparations for the journey to the drift expanse were rushed but thorough. Supplies were gathered, weapons checked, and contingencies planned. Despite the urgency, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping through their fingers. The Echoes were growing stronger, their presence detectable even at such great distances. Nightmares plagued his sleep, filled with visions of endless eyes staring into his soul. During waking hours, he avoided discussing these fears, focusing instead on practical matters. But Yarrick noticed. "You holding up okay, boss?" he asked one evening, handing Kale a cup of synthetic coffee. Kale forced a smile. "Just tired," he lied. Yarrick didn't press further, but his skeptical glance said enough. Later that night, Kale found himself staring at the artifact, now secured in a containment unit aboard the Aegis Dawn Dash. This glow pulsed rhythmically, almost hypnotic. Against his better judgment, he reached out, placing a hand against the glass. Instantly, images flooded his mind. Strange landscapes, towering spires, and beings whose forms defied logic. Pain shot through his skull, and he stumbled backward, gasping. Yarrick burst into the room moments later, weapon drawn. "What happened?" he demanded. Cale shook his head, unable to explain. The drift expanse lived up to its name, a vast, chaotic region of space where conventional navigation failed. Gravity wells twisted unpredictably, pulling ships off course and into danger. Cale relied heavily on instinct and experience to guide the Aegis Dawn through the maelstrom. Even so, progress was slow and fraught with peril. Several times, they narrowly avoided collisions with rogue asteroids or collapsing star clusters. Morale among the trio remained fragile, bolstered only by fleeting moments of camaraderie. During one particularly harrowing stretch, Rhea shared stories of her early days in the Vanguard Initiative. Her tales of daring rescues and narrow escapes provided a temporary distraction from their grim mission. Yarrick listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions or comments. Cale, however, remained distant, his thoughts consumed by the artifact and the cryptic vision it had shown him. Something about the spires felt familiar, though he couldn't say why. Perhaps it was a clue, or perhaps it was merely a trick played by his exhausted mind. After days of relentless travel, they reached the coordinates indicated on Rhea's map. What awaited them defied expectation. Rising from the heart of a crimson nebula stood a colossal structure resembling a jagged mountain carved from obsidian. Energy crackled along its surface, forming intricate patterns that shifted constantly. This was no mere relic. It was alive, pulsing with power and purpose. Rhea identified it immediately as the Nexus Spire, the rumored origin point of the Architect's technology. Approaching the spire proved challenging. Defensive mechanisms activated as soon as they entered its vicinity, unleashing waves of automated drones programmed to eliminate intruders. Cale piloted the Aegis Dawn with expert precision, weaving through the barrage while Yarrick manned the turrets. Explosions lit up the viewport as rounds connected with targets, reducing the drones to smoldering wreckage. Yet, for every drone destroyed, 2 more took its place. It was clear they couldn't win this fight outright. They needed another strategy. Desperation drove them to attempt a risky maneuver, landing directly on the spire itself. Using magnetic clamps, they secured the Aegis Dawn to the structure's exterior, praying it would hold. Once anchored, they suited up and ventured outside, traversing the treacherous terrain on foot. The climb was grueling, exacerbated by unstable footing and unpredictable weather conditions generated by the spire's energy field. Lightning arced wildly, striking dangerously close as they ascended. Halfway up, they encountered a massive doorway adorned with symbols matching those etched into the artifact. Rhea deciphered the markings quickly, activating the entrance mechanism. Beyond lay a labyrinthine interior bathed in ethereal light. Walls shimmered with liquid-like textures, and the air vibrated with a deep, resonant hum. Progress was slow as they navigated the maze, wary of traps and hidden dangers. At last, they reached a central chamber dominated by a second artifact identical to the first. Only this one radiated warmth rather than cold menace. Touching the second artifact elicited a different response than the first. Instead of pain, Cale experienced clarity, an influx of knowledge so profound it threatened to overwhelm him. Images of the Architect's history unfolded in his mind, their rise, their fall, and the creation of the Echoes as both guardians and jailers. He understood now why the artifacts existed, to maintain balance between order and chaos. But restoring equilibrium required sacrifice. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Turning to Rhea and Yarrick, he voiced his conclusion. We can't destroy the Echoes outright. We have to merge the artifacts and reseal them. But someone has to stay behind to ensure the process completes. Silence fell over the group. Rhea looked stricken, while Yarrick clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath the surface. There's got to be another way, Yarrick growled. Cale shook his head. Not unless you want to risk unleashing them completely. Reluctantly, they agreed to proceed, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. Uniting the artifacts involved complex rituals outlined in holographic projections scattered throughout the chamber. Following these instructions meticulously, Kale and Rhea worked together to align the artifacts while Yarrick kept watch for any sign of interference. Time seemed to blur as they focused on the task, their movements synchronized despite the tension hanging over them. Slowly, the artifacts began to resonate, their combined energy creating a swirling vortex at the chamber's center. As the ritual neared completion, the ground trembled violently, signaling the arrival of the echoes. Dozens poured into the chamber, their forms shifting and merging into larger, more menacing shapes. Yarrick opened fire, buying precious seconds for Kale and Rhea to finish. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the creature's translucent hides, but his determination never wavered. "Hurry up!" he shouted, desperation edging his voice. With a final adjustment, the artifacts locked into place, bathing the room in blinding light. The echoes screamed, a sound that reverberated through the very fabric of reality. As they were pulled back into the vortex, Kale turned to Yarrick, nodding silently. It was time. Yarrick refused to leave. "I'm staying," he declared firmly, stepping toward the artifacts. "You two go. I'll make sure this thing stays sealed." Kale argued briefly, but Yarrick's resolve was unshakable. In the end, there was no choice but to accept his decision. With heavy hearts, Kale and Rhea retreated to the Aegis Dawn Dash, leaving Yarrick behind to face the unknown. As they launched away from the spire, the structure collapsed inward, consumed by the energy surge. Tears streamed down Rhea's face, though she made no sound. Kale gripped the controls tightly, forcing himself to focus on the path ahead. They had succeeded at great personal cost, but the victory felt hollow. News of their success spread quickly, though official reports omitted key details. The galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief, unaware of the true nature of the threat they had narrowly avoided. Kale and Rhea returned to active duty, their bond strengthened by shared trauma. Yet neither could forget the sacrifices made along the way. Memories of Yarrick lingered, haunting their dreams and coloring their interactions. Months later, Kale received a message encrypted with a code only Yarrick would use. Confused and alarmed, he decrypted it immediately. The contents were brief but unmistakable. "Still kicking. Found something big. Meet me at old coordinates." Hope surged within Kale, tempered by caution. Could Yarrick really have survived? Or was this some cruel trick orchestrated by forces beyond understanding? Returning to the site of the original disaster, Kale and Rhea discovered a small, battered vessel docked near the ruins. Emerging from it was indeed Yarrick, looking worse for wear but undeniably alive. Over drinks in the cramped confines of his ship, he recounted his ordeal. After sealing the echoes, he'd been transported to a realm outside normal spacetime, where he encountered remnants of the architects themselves. They had granted him limited access to their knowledge, tasking him with safeguarding the galaxy against future threats. Though relieved to see him, Kale and Rhea couldn't ignore the implications. If the architects still existed in some form, then the danger was far from over. Yarrick assured them he intended to continue fighting, albeit from the shadows. "Some battles are better fought alone," he said cryptically. Before parting ways, he handed Kale a small device. "In case you need backup," he explained with a grin. Then he was gone, vanishing into the stars once more. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the scars of their journey remained. Kale often found himself gazing at the stars, wondering what challenges lay ahead. Rhea resumed leadership of the Vanguard Initiative, her perspective forever altered by recent events. Together, they vowed to remain vigilant, ready to confront whatever darkness might emerge. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one truth remained constant. The universe was vast, beautiful, and infinitely dangerous. And somewhere out there, Yarrick Thane watched over them all, a guardian angel armed with secrets older than time itself. As the credits roll, remember, you've only scratched the surface of this epic saga. Hit subscribe to join the adventure and uncover the mysteries waiting beyond the horizon. Subscribe now for more thrilling journeys through the cosmos.